And death and illnesses have made it necessary for us to have this lull. The good news is that God is good and we are blessed and we are back. And so we are going to have this open mic approach this evening. If you choose to call in, you may do it at 858-251-6111. Or you may go to godradio1.com and get us on your electronic device. And so we got a number of things we want to talk about. I am anticipating a guest joining us in a while because we do want to have a discussion concerning some of the conduct and activities of our local police. But I also want to very much share with you what we have happening since we have been away. We're moving into this election season, and there's a lot going on, and I'm very concerned about what this means for African Americans. And so this week, I followed up on what we did last week. I talked about the importance of the vote, and I reminded people that in May of 1957, Dr. Martin Luther King gave a speech in Washington, D.C., entitled Give Us the Ballot. And it was a very important speech that he gave because this was before the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And this was one of those speeches that was designed to remind people of what we could do if we had the ballot. And, and one of the things he said in this speech was, give us the ballot and we will fill our legislative halls with men of good wills. He said, give us the ballot and we will place judges on the benches. He mentioned the South in particular, who will do justice with love. And so there's so much tied to the ballot. We did get the Voting Rights Act and it changed the political makeup of the South. But then, that in 2013, I believe it was, the Supreme Court gutted it by removing a great deal of the oversight that the Justice Department had, which kept the gerrymandering, the restructuring of electoral districts against the poor and people of color. A lot of that was struck down. So this evening we want to talk about the importance of voting as well, because it's a topic that most of us want to shy away from, and yet it influences us in many ways. I'd like to pause, though, and share recognition with my co-host here, Dr. Leonard Thompson III.
Well, Dr. Warren, it is good to be back here. Good to be in the land of the living, and good to be able to get back to the hot topics of the day. I want to get to the voters' rights, but before I get to the voters' right, what do you think about the raid at Mar-a-Lago?
Oh, I think that's just a wonderful thing, and I think that it's overdue. I think the president is going to learn, the former president is going to learn an important lesson, that he's not bigger than the government, even though he thinks so. But I think what's so revealing is his followers. When you look at adult people, many of whom are educated, like the Republicans, and who insist on embracing a lie, insist on trying to undermine government, insist on speaking as if what they say is real. It's scary that people can have that kind of separation from reality. And it also reminds us of how Adolf Hitler was able to take over Germany. He was a wallpaper hanger who was able to take a country because people bought the big lie.
Yeah, and one of the real sad things about it, at the end of the day, they're still denying that there was wrongdoing. They're still denying that what he did was very unpresidential, unpatriotic. They're still denying that he consistently breaks laws. And so it comes down to that kind of thing. There's rules for everybody else but us. And we make up our rules and we can change them as we go along. And so I'm hoping that we can wake up the American public, but more than anything else, I really am just encouraging to wake up the docile people who are saying that they won't vote or they don't want to be involved because it doesn't make a difference. Again, the quote from Martin Luther King, which you shared today, we can have the ballot, we can be on the ballot, but if we won't vote the ballot and make sure that people understand the importance of the ballot, and when I tell you that I'm confused on these initiatives myself that I'm actually have to study and ask questions because they got yes on tribal gambling and no on tribal gambling, and one's for the big and one's for the little, and the people that say that they really playing with your emotions. But the portion of the ballot is that it's like it has to be just as important as us watching what they call the reality shows. You know, we don't want to miss a reality show. We will schedule it in. We will record it. We will TiVo it. We will DVR it just so that we won't miss, so that we have something to talk about the next day or we watch it online. So my question is that we can't be caught up in so much false reality that we don't deal with the reality that we face every day through the vote.
Well, everything you just said is so important, Dr. Thompson, because we are 90 days away from, a little more than 90 days away from the midterm elections, and probably 60 days away from the cutoff of voter registration. And, I'd like to share a statistic in San Diego County. 46.9% of the 3.4 million people that live in San Diego County are renters. Mm-hmm. Now, that's very significant because that number, those people are not voters. They are renters, but they're not voters. Now, here's the importance of that statistic.
Oh, wait a minute. You got to explain that, because you mean to tell me if you rent, you can't vote?
No, you can vote. Okay. But historically, renters have a different MO they found than, say, homeowners, all right? Homeowners get up earlier than renters do. Homeowners get up because they have stuff to do and maintain. It's not to say that renters are bad people. But what it does say is that there's a culture of it's not my responsibility. It's almost like George Foreman in that commercial that he does when he says, "It's not my problem." Yeah. And so we miss that it is our problem. And I'm going to say more about it as we get into it.
So really, what we are finding out is that renters, when they rent, they're more transient. So if they decide that they don't like the property or they don't like their lease, they let their lease run out and then they move on. Versus homeowners, once you make that investment, normally you're going to stay there and you're going to go for the long haul, because it's hard to move from house to house as it is from apartment to apartment or when you're renting something.
Well, there's a yes and a no to that, because let me not give renters a bad name. What happens is that many people have been in properties that they rent 12, 20, 30 years. Mm-hmm. You go to La Jolla and you go along the La Jolla shoreline there where they have apartments. Many have been converted to condos. Mm-hmm. You also have a situation where you have many people as we get older. We might have been homeowners when we were younger, but once we moved to the empty nest, house was too big, upkeep. Mm-hmm. So people move from home to
that
condo.
2-story house to the condo because we don't want no yard.
No,
we don't want no steps.
You don't want that. And a lot of my friends have moved in that direction. I know I had to. I looked at one point. I was looking at 2 acres, 6,000 square feet, 9-car garage, 6 horses, 3-story house, all kinds of expenses. From $1,000 a month for gas to $500 a month minimum for water, because animals have to have water. Mm-hmm. And all kinds of landscaping. And, when you get older, you don't need the headache of all of that. You want to be able, when you get ready, you can just lock the door, take a cruise, get on a flight, go where you want to. Mm-hmm. Somebody will hold your mail till you get back, and it makes sense. So we don't want to give a bad name to it because it's a generational piece. Mm-hmm. As far as homeowners, in California, it's a very interesting thing. Even among home ownership, there's about an average of a 5-year turnover in many instances in terms of property. And that can be death, that can be divorce, that can be a whole variety of things. The problem we have here, though, is unlike other places, everything is so slanted toward the landlord in this scenario. Right now, we have people experiencing rent increases of couple of $100 a month. And we just saw something on the news the other day, Paradise Village in National City, which is a very upscale retirement residential community. They just did the ultimate, where if there are 2 people in a unit, they just made the decision that as of September, they're going to charge $1,000 more a month for the second person.
Oh, my.
Okay. And they don't give long-term leases because you're dealing with older folks, and so you don't know if they're going to be there long term. So we have a bunch of issues at stake, and what we do know is that landlords vote, landlords contribute to candidates, judges are landlords, and so we have a situation where we don't have rent control. We have a battle against it, and we just came through a period where there was a freeze on evictions because people couldn't pay. The government did subsidies. Once that lifted, landlords rushed in to get eviction notices. Well, in San Diego in particular, if you have an eviction on your credit report, then they don't want to rent to you. So we're increasing the homelessness at the same time that we're building more apartments, high-rise condos that people can't afford because people have to have an average of 3 months rent in terms of 1 month's income. It costs approximately $5,000 just to move in San Diego. So all of these things could be changed if the people who are renting decided to become voters and start making a point that we're going to vote for people who address this issue for us.
So let me ask you this question, which is really interesting. Growing up in the city of San Diego and watching the development and the things that are going away, I watched us expand. We used to think that if you lived out in Mira Mesa, you had went further way out, but now they're in Temecula and the Riverside area, and people work in San Diego will still go way out there. And we saw that great expansion. Everybody's saying, we're going to Temecula, we're going to Menifee, we're going to here. But now we're seeing another expansion where they're saying we're going across the border, and there's now a talk about having the trolley go across the border and there be a trolley station on the other side of the border, and people actually can board on there. And they're already vetted. It'd be something the same as going through the borderline, but you can hop on the trolley and don't have to wait in the line to get across to get on the trolley. What's your thought about the expansion of people saying, you know what, America, because I can say that, San Diego, United States is too expensive, so we're now moving across the border, and we see a lot of people from San Diego doing that now.
Well, this is not new. 25, 30 years ago, I was a part of a group called the Forum, I think it was, and it was a monthly meeting with people like Saul Price, Malin Burnham, a lot of very wealthy people with folks, business people from the other side of the border. And in those days, there was much discussion about how do we eliminate the border in terms of its impact on commerce. And so one of the things we saw was that the Rodriguez Airport on the other side of the border began to expand. I think we've built a land bridge or something to go over there. And it's very interesting because if you were to fly to Mexico City from San Diego, your fare would be drastically different than if you crossed the border and flew from Rodriguez in Mexico down in terms of further. So you have this factor of that's why we have the fast track now, because that was business getting with the federal government, creating a means for people to get a special lane if they qualified and had the ID, and they can go back and forth, coming back and forth. So more people do want to do that. As far as opening up for the traffic, over 25 years ago when I think it was when Bates was congressman, there was the idea that we needed to go back to having the train go through Mexico and come out at Campo. And so at one point, there was a select group of us that were put on a train, and we went through Tijuana, and we went through the back country and came out in Campo, and that was to be open. So it's just going to be a matter of time in terms of opening it up because it's for business. It's not for the people. It's for business. I'm going to hold off on that because I see our guest has joined us, and we're going to have lots of time to talk about this issue because it's not going to go away.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, Dr. Warren, I see that Tasha Williamson is on. Good evening, Miss Williamson.
Hi, everybody. Sorry I'm late. I had another meeting that ran late, so I'm glad I was able to make it before you guys got off. Thank you so much for having me.
I told everybody you was at Bow-Legged Barbecue, waiting in the line to get your barbecue, and you was just running late. But I thank
I'm
you for
actually in
wait.
Lakeside, but
Say
no.
wait. Thank you for wiping your face before you came on. so,
Can you
so
give us a little volume?
yes, sir, I can.
Okay.
Okay.
We wanted to invite Sister Tasha on because she has been a real warrior in terms of the whole issue of the police conduct in our community. And of course, she ran for mayor. She made a statement in doing that. But she's not been loved by everybody based on her positions because some people in the community aren't supportive. But the reality is that we need the watchdog tenaciousness that she brings in terms of the San Diego police. And the police have not really changed their culture either in San Diego that much or in other parts of the country. We see that people are still being shot. We still see that it doesn't seem to make any difference what happened to George Floyd. We know right up the road in Rancho Bernardo, a young man was just shot 7 times in the back. We know in Chicago they've been killing people. We know here we lost a man in El Cajon because he had a cell phone. We lost a young man in Minnesota sitting in his car because the officer confused her taser with her service weapon, which is hard to believe. We lost a young man in Texas because the officer lived in the building and she thought she was at her house when she went to his. We didn't buy that one for a minute, and she got off. And so we just have all of these incidents going on all over the place. And a lot of it goes to the attitude that the police reflect when they have their first encounter with us. And I wanted to talk about the manners of the police department. And I wanted Sister Tasha to share with us this latest scenario, the one that I was looking at this morning at 4 a.m. in terms of a situation that was taking place. So, Tasha, would you just kind of give us a rough summary of what you're finding with not just this particular instance, but you're right there on the front line. We don't have activity from the commission on police policies and practices yet because they can't get staffed. The Citizen Review Board is all bottlenecked and can't function. So the police are pretty much on their own. So just help us understand before we find ourselves being pulled over, because the number of pullover and stops are increasing in our community. Recently, they stopped the pastor of Bayview, and he was concerned about why he was being stopped. And I understand he called the chief of police to complain about the stop, and the police chief asked him what did he want him to do, and so he got mad and hung up on him. And I guess maybe he thought he wasn't supposed to be stopped. But I need to do this because we got a lot of people think we so important that we get a pass, and we don't. So I'm going to shut up, Tasha, and let you speak to this issue for us.
I'm sorry if you guys hear background. I'm at a community center. I just want to say that it's shocking because this is the second time that pastor has been pulled over by SDPD under two different chiefs, and so it's not shocking. It's just disheartening that no matter what status you are in, no matter what title you hold, if you are Black in San Diego, you are subject to be mistreated, and racially profiled by SDPD. And when you want to file a complaint, like what I did the other night, depending on who you get, is how they will treat you. If you're getting someone who is a good old boy, a part of the police culture, embedded in this police culture, then you may get a report or complaint, and you may get the 619-531-2000 number, and told to call your complaint in. The policy says that whenever you go to a personnel, any personnel of SDPD to file a complaint, that complaint should be taken down and moved forward by that personnel person. However, that is not what is happening. People are deciding that they can walk away, drive away, not take your complaint, not call for a supervisor. Those are all violations of their policies and procedures with SDPD. And we're also finding that supervisors, field training officers, field training sergeants, and some field lieutenants are part of that good old boy network and do not want to follow policy and procedure, and also are training other newer officers to not follow policy and procedure as well. This is the culture of policing that has always been a problem for generations, and it continues in 2022.
Well, Tasha, as you're speaking, of course, a lot of people here are too young to remember, but I believe it was back in 1978 that the San Diego police found themselves under review by the Department of Justice, and they had to have one of those consent decrees that we see that was put over in, Missouri after Michael Brown was killed, and we've seen it in different cities where the police Justice Department has come in to look at the police. They've done it in Oakland. They've come in to look at how things are going. And we have some real strange things happening. Just a few days ago in a little place called, is it Kinley, North Carolina? The little town put a black woman in as, I guess, town manager. And when she was appointed town manager.
City manager.
Huh?
City manager.
City manager. Yeah, I said town because it's so small. But city manager, the entire white police force resigned in mass. And so we got to deal with this attitude, and we cannot legislate people's hearts and minds. And I think that this is what we have to be looking at here in San Diego. Just a footnote, I don't, as a journalist, I don't put people's business in the street, but the other side of this coin is that some people who get stopped in our community have reasons on their records for why they are stopped. But even so, a stop by the police is not supposed to be a judge, jury, and an execution, which has become in so many cases for many of us. And so
that's right.
I in your particular instance, the one thing that stands out to me, you were very courteous in your conversation. You referred to the officer by his title. He's going to call you Tasha. You told him you were Mrs. Williamson, and his attitude was, you still Tasha. And so, to me, that's kind of like still being the N word. You can be Dr. N, Reverend N, Mr. N, but as far as I'm concerned, you still the N. And so I don't have to, because if I have to give you a title, now I'm acknowledging you as a fellow human being. And if I want to mistreat you, I got to keep you dehumanized so that I can justify it in my mind. Am I on the right track?
Oh, you absolutely are on the right track. Not only that, he took his pen and paper, whether my car is a bucket or a $50,000, $100,000 car. He took his pen and paper, wrote on the top hood of my car. I asked him not to do it, to write on his car. He continued to write on my car with his pen and pad. Totally disrespectful. But this is Sergeant Ruggiero. Sergeant Ruggiero has a history of disrespecting people in our communities for his career. Not only that, we need to talk about the nepotism that is going on within SDPD, because he is a third generation police officer, just like many, many other officers that are coming up the ranks. These are not our first generation officers. These are officers who have been on the police force as little kids, following their grandparents and their parents' footsteps, moving up the ranks.
Well, you're being real nice, because Ned's like the second generation. And Roulette Armstead, I remember before she passed, when she was at the BPO, the Black Police Officers Dinner. Yeah, I mean, she got in his case, because she called him a little boy, because here he was down there. And there are a couple of more down there. I remember them by name, where father, son, they're all following. They all bring the same attitude to the workplace. And so this is the issue. I'm sorry, Dr. Thompson.
Ms. Williamson, lots have taken place with the police all around the country. When we talk about police reform and shifting, what are the first steps? If everybody gave you a blank slate and they said, look, we need to reform policing and do it differently. Where do we start with that? And can we start with the officers that we have now, or do we have to clear house?
Oh yeah, no, we need to clean house. We need to cut it off at the head, because without the head, the body can't survive. And so you need to start at the top. You have assistant chiefs and a chief who has supported racism within their department. No, look no further than Sergeant Ruggiero, who had posted prior to becoming a sergeant that BLM was black slime. He reposted a post agreeing with that post that Black Lives Matter was black slime, meaning Black lives is black slime. He even agreed with me when I said, I know you hate BLM on my live, and then wanted to try and clean it up because I was on live. This is a sergeant. This is a sergeant of many sergeants. You have a sergeant in Mid-City also who said that don't worry, to a white man that had been detained. The canines only bite dark meat. This was on body-worn camera that they refused to release to the public. You have an officer who was in TRU for being turned in by another officer for saying he didn't hate Jews as much as he hated the N-word, and he used it in the full word, was turned in by this officer, was in TRU for a year for as the investigation prolonged. And as soon as he got off his first day with a black captain at that division, was made an acting sergeant. I protested him because we are not ends, and how dare this department continue to accept racism at the level that it has. They just had a sergeant's exam. And they made it so easy for their children to take the second class versus the first class, because we know that when people take the first class, they can let the second class know what was on the test. So we're not going to sit here and act like nepotism is not a problem. You have to stop having nepotism, which is also what Ms. Roulette said. It was an issue within law enforcement, was the nepotism, allowing your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren, your brothers and your sisters to all be on the same force. Like we had the Guadaramas. This was a huge problem. We have allowed corruption to go on for far too long in law enforcement. And there are too many things that we would need to tackle to make it right. But we first have to start with saying that we will not tolerate racism. We will not tolerate poor quality customer service. We will ensure that hate is dealt with. We will ensure that complaints are taken properly. This police department is trying to do away with third-party complaints unless the person involved comes forward. So they're just going to put it in a desk. If the person that was involved doesn't come forward. A complaint is a complaint. No matter who provides that complaint, it should be investigated, because that is the only way you know what kind of condition your department is in, and how your officers are treating the community you so desperately tell you want to build trust with.
So let me ask you this question. So we have police and we have different divisions and things of that nature. If you were to rank, and this is a quick question, if you were to rank the divisions on the level of most favorable versus least favorable, what would be the most favorable division in San Diego to work with, and the least favorable?
I don't think for a Black person there is a most favorite or least favorite, because the color of my skin determines how I'm stopped all over this city in every division. We are still stopped at the highest rate and treated with the most disrespect at those stops, according to their own data, with the use of force, why that people are being stopped. The fact that we don't have contraband, whites have more drugs and contraband than we do, but we are still stopped the most because we're Black. We don't belong here. What are you doing here? Why are you driving this car? Where do you live? We got to prove ourselves as American citizens in our country.
And this is very true, Ms. Williamson, because, there's no such thing as I can't be in a community. I can't be in a neighborhood. I can't walk down the street. The late Langley Powell, who was president of San Diego Trolley, grew up with Emmett Till in Chicago. And he often told a story that when he moved back downtown from Alpine, because he had been an athlete, a boxer, he would go out in the morning along the waterfront to jog. And his first day out, he encounters the harbor police, and they want to know, what are you doing? And why are you here? Of course, he almost got locked up because, the things he said to them, you can't repeat on this program. But it's like, you don't have to justify, I call it living while being black is what has happened. Now, the history is so rich here. One of the greatest Supreme Court cases of about 40 years ago involved a black man who was walking down the street in La Jolla with dreadlocks, and he was stopped by the cops, and he was smart enough to take his case all the way to the Supreme Court, and he won the case against them. But let us not forget that the mayor is the boss of the police chief, okay? And so because we have a strong mayor form of government, and just like Lansdowne made it very clear that he served at the desire and discretion of the mayor. And so we have this situation here where we have a young mayor, a person of color, who's trying to build a community, but there's a lot of disrespect of him in terms of the police department. And so the police department is not just a police department. If you watch some of the documentaries about what happened at 9/11, and you get into those families of the firemen, and you will find an interesting pattern that's revealed in the midst of all of the grief, that people's brothers and uncles and cousins and fathers, family, okay? We had the same thing here. We don't have a history of blacks moving into the fire department. We've had a few blacks who got in and thought that they were so special that they didn't have to be black after they got there. But we have this situation here. We have black on the 7th floor, and I believe very strongly if there's ever an effort made to make him chief of police, I will be downtown with picket signs saying he might be my color but not my kind, because we don't need to put people in office just because of how they look. And see, black people got to understand that there's a relationship between how we're treated and whether or not we're respected.
And that's the reason why I was asking, because there's not just white officers, but there are black officers, Asian officers, and Latino officers that are all making up the police force. There's the whole consensus. Where they ask Jesus, "Can any good thing come out of Nineveh?"
Yes, Phillips.
Can any good thing come out of the police department? Is there anything salvageable with the police department that you think that we could build on?
Well, Tasha, I don't know. I mean, I know you got a little distraction going there.
That's okay. That was the sheriff.
That was what?
The sheriff.
Oh, okay.
trying to talk to me. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Let's on that. He's asking, is there what we can salvage from the police department? And let's remind Dr. Thompson that we have this group in San Diego County. I forget what we call it. It's the Law Enforcement Council. It's made up of all the sheriffs, all the police chiefs, DEA, FBI.
You're talking about the chiefs and sheriffs council, and I think the district attorney is on there as well. It's
a whole bunch of people on there. They meet once a month.
Every chief from every law enforcement department.
Yeah, it's more stars in there than there are in the flag. In that meeting, but it doesn't mean that it's all about. And they give the illusion of wanting to be fair and just. But at the end of the day, we still have these problems. Now, let's mention something else, Dr. Thompson. Tasha, you can address this. They recently made a little agreement that if a particular police jurisdiction had an issue come up for an investigation, that they wouldn't investigate themselves, but they would pass it off to one of the companion police departments to do the investigation. Well, that's just like the fox in one hen house going over to the fox at KFC and saying, let's switch places. Both of them are still into the chicken. And so this is where we have issue. Did you have a comment on that, that little
I mean,
pack.
most definitely. I think that after COVID came about, that we learned all the lies that they told us, because they told us years ago that couldn't happen. And look at how it's happening. So if that can't happen and now it's happening, why can't they do what we've asked them to do, which is have an outside entity investigate all of those police involved shootings besides a law enforcement entity? So we know that they can change at the whim that they want, that they can create MOUs with each other, that they can interchange and make decisions outside of any community input. So we know that they can do whatever it is that they want them to do, but they can also do what we are asking them to do as well.
Well, Tasha, let's not forget that they have with the Commission on Police Practices, they have the independent counsel authority. They've hired, matter of fact, they hired an African American lawyer as outside counsel to do some of what you're saying. It's just that now we have this bottleneck. And I'm sorry, Dr. Thompson, but I got so busy here, we didn't even allow to see if we had questions to come in. We had.
No, we're doing good right now. I have one that says, I have a situation that I will be filing this Friday or Monday about being attacked by a white male. And the sheriff department completely ignored that I was attacked on June 19th. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, that's interesting, because I'm here at Lakeside, and they were having a community neighbor community gathering that I was invited to. The sheriff was here, and he talked about the sheriff for the Lakeside division talked about how they were trying to make changes in how they dealt with hate crimes. So if that victim is Black and that perpetrator is white and it's a hate crime attached to that assault or even an assault, they were trying to do better, is what they said. So I'm glad to know that they also need to improve, because we know that they do. The sheriff's has one of the worst in custody jail deaths, some horrible customer service when it comes to dealing with Black people. These are the things, the hard evidence that we need about how our people are really being treated by law enforcement.
So Tasha, I got to ask this question, because when I think about the in custody deaths and the amount of African American deputies that do work in our prison system, those that work on the police force as well as in the sheriff's department, how are they faring? Are they just being a part of the system, and they're not standing up for the rights of people of color?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that we've seen what happens when Black law enforcement officers stand up, and how even when we go back to Mrs. Roulette and how she was treated, and we go even to where I believe it was Sergeant R. Scott when he sued the police department for the cartoon character, and how other law enforcement got up and lied on the stand, and also reportedly lied on the stand, and it's difficult. This is a white, racist, structured system that is not kind to Black skin internally or externally. And so we are going to have those Blacks who go along to get along so that they can get a paycheck to build generational wealth with their families, because they are whipped, to me, into shape because of how retaliation works, because we are watching how Blacks are not moving up the ladder, even if they have all of the credentials to do so, if they have stood up and stand up against this racist system.
Well, let me say three things, Tasha. I have a steel trap memory, and when you mentioned Lakeside, I can't help but remember following the stabbing, you had an encounter out there with a sheriff sergeant who was very rude and disrespectful to you. You remember? You filed. I think you raised a complaint. And
Yes.
you remember the situation I'm talking about? So
I
has
do.
has the friendly sheriff done anything about that situation?
No,
Oh, okay.
no,
Because see,
no.
that's where I have a
You know,
problem.
the issue with me is that I can't expect the way I fight for justice and our people and exposing injustices. I can't expect law enforcement to that has been generationally unjust to our people to now turn around and act as if they care about Atasha Williamson. They hate me, and it's okay
Well,
because if they mistreat our people, if they mistreat our people on our blocks, I'm gonna walk their blocks. If they mistreat our children at their schools, I'm gonna find out where their children go to school, and we're gonna walk those blocks. Fear is a tactic. Fear is a tactic that they used on us, and I'm a reflection of what they did to us. So they are angry and upset, and hate is what they have for me, and that's okay. As long as they don't disrespect our people, and every single time they show themselves, I'm gonna show myself.
well, let's move over to the solution element because we've talked a lot about the problem. And I want to throw three things out here that we need to be aware of. First of all, we need to break the culture in San Diego, and I've seen it for the past 35 years with the Voice and Viewpoint, that people, it seems to be human nature. I saw it in D.C. as well, that people, not like the 60s when we were all black and we pulled together. We've got a generation of people today that if they didn't bother me, I'm not going to get involved. And so I don't, and so we stay apathetic and we stay laid back. I think we ought to look very closely at what happened in Kentucky, where the U.S. Justice Department brought charges against those four police officers in the Breonna Taylor murder, and they were indicted in terms of what happened. I think we need to remind people that in the state of California, the Attorney General is a place where complaints should be filed if you're not getting an answer. And every complaint that's filed has to be investigated. And so we need to understand that. We need to understand that in the state of California, if we got judges that are showing bias, that we have the right to file complaints against them with the Commission on Judicial Tenure because they have done it against black judges in other parts of the country. And so I just want us to become aware that we have an option beyond just complaining to ourselves or taking the abuse, that we need to get so that we document and organize and make it uncomfortable to come after us. Right now, they think they don't have to worry about it. We're not going to band together. We're going to make a little noise, and a few people going to march with you, and then it's going to be over. And we have to change that. And it's up to us to change it. So I wanted to have you on to do this discussion. We only lighten just scratching the bottom of it, Dr. Thompson. Mm-hmm. And I think we got to stay with it because they are bringing all kinds of police units into the community. We don't have as much crime as other places in San Diego County, but we're getting more and more pullover and stops.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And Tasha, one of the things that I consistently say is that we see the problem, we see the multiplicity of problems that we face each and every day. But I think that now we have to spend more time on what are the solutions and what are the action items that we have to do to really create change. Because I think that we've talked the problem to death, but we have not did the action to bring about change. And so
I disagree, though.
Okay.
I disagree. I think that many of us, including yourselves, mm-hmm. I've watched you, mm-hmm. Mr. Thompson and Dr. Warren, I've watched you all fight just as hard for justice, sit at the table with these people mm-hmm. who don't like you, people mm-hmm. who will treat you bad, who retaliated against you, still sit at the table with them with decency and respect. And talk to them and plead with them, sometimes even begging with them to do the right thing, even giving them solutions that they disregarded. And so I think that this system is going to have to want to change mm-hmm. Because we can do all that we do. We got a Black advisory board, mayor's advisory board, and ain't nothing changed for Black people in the city of San Diego. We got a weak 14 plan for Black empowerment, and ain't nothing changed. in San Diego. This is the week. I mean, come on. Everybody said that this mayor was going to do something. And I haven't seen the mayor do anything to make changes for Black people. I haven't seen the school district do anything to make changes for Black people. I haven't seen the police do anything to make changes for Black people. I haven't seen a court system do anything to make changes for Black people. Y'all been fighting longer than I've been fighting. So
Well,
what do we do?
Well, Taj, I got to disagree with you on a couple of things. First of all, I don't sit at the table and beg for nothing with anyone, number one.
But I'm not saying you
And they're
beg,
not
but
going
I'm
to
saying
disrespect me.
leaders.
And we are responsible in large part for people disrespecting us because we let them get away with disrespecting us. You see, even going back to some of our past leaders, they get buddy and they get on first name basis with people. I'm not here to be their friend. And I used to tell my kids when they asked me coming up, is this person? No, they're not my friend. This is somebody I have to deal with. But you're not my friend because I deal with you. I'm going to treat you with some respect, but I'm going to demand respect. And we've got to get our community to start respecting itself again. Because when you mentioned the 14 plan empowerment, the people who drew up that plan, they didn't talk to nobody but themselves and their little group of friends. They didn't care about the rest of us.
I'm agreeing
These are
with you.
same.
And the equity plan that the equity report they just did, Dr. Warren, you could have helped them do the equity report. I mean, how come they didn't look to your expertise? They did an equity report and started it in 2015, talking about the war on drugs. The war on drugs started in 1971. Mm-hmm. Come on now. We know what you're doing. And then you talking about the people that was the most impacted are in North Park, in downtown LA. I mean, downtown San Diego. Yeah. Get out of here. Are you serious right now? Yeah. That's the report they pushing on the 18th.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I think that, how we say that knowledge is power and how do we bring it about. I think the frustrating piece right now is that there's so many pockets of people saying that they're doing things, that we're moving. I don't know about you, but I'm meeting out because you can go to 5 meetings a day. It still be the same outcome almost every time. I'm looking forward to how we bring about change, and that's one of those things that not just praying about it, but really beginning to make decisions on how we spend our time. Because there are a lot of times there's that busy work, and that's the busy meetings, but the meetings are just fluff, but they're not outcome driven or are putting things in place that there's change. And so I'm looking forward as we move forth in the latter years or the years that are coming up, that we will invest our time with those things that are going to have effective change and not just a fluff or a position or I'm with these people change, because that's the only way we're going to be able to bring about a change for our kids. Our kids are frustrated. And the sad thing about it is I know that we've had frustration over the years, but now I feel like our kids have even more means to do damage than we had back in the day. And I think it's important now that we're going to have to make a move before the youth make the move that no one will be able to contain. And I share that with you all because I watched it. This is crazy, but I watched a TV show last night called All Rise. And there was this young millennial, I won't say millennial, but kid, and he literally was controlling millions of kids, and everything he did was on code. And he would tell them, okay, snatch and grab this place. And nobody could figure out until they found out the code. And he literally said to the judge in there, he said, I don't think you want, kind of like, you don't want this heat. And literally they called a shot and the kids were running into the court and tearing things up, and they couldn't contain. You know what I'm saying? And I think that if we don't create change, there will be that chaos of change that people won't be able to contain.
I give our kids a lot more credit, especially our kid activists, our youth activists, as we should say, to see them organize and strategize and have peaceful demonstrations all across San Diego County. I think we have some amazing up and rising leaders in our youth who have done exactly what you all have done. I mean, they have really taken looked at history and done exactly what we've shown them and you've shown them, right? And our elders before us have shown them. But like you, I'm tired of meeting. I'm tired of protesting. I'm tired. And so I have found that officers do not want their homes protested. I have found that captains do not want their divisions protested. You have a captain currently who is looking to leave the department. You have sergeants, you have 260 officers who have left because of many different reasons. A lot of it is the vaccination, but some of those people have left because the culture is not the same, because people are rising up and they're standing up. And they're doing a number of things, including what Dr. Warren said, and filing complaints and lawsuits and all that stuff. I think it takes all of those things to happen. We become a mighty fist, utilizing all the things that we need to be a powerful blow to this racist culture.
Well, Tasha, we're going to have to cut it off at this point. We're going to come back again with you, but we want to thank you for being here, and
Thank you.
and keep us posted. And we're going to make sure that we keep up and that we stay on top of this. All right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And I was going to say, Tasha, we also would love to have a conversation with some of these young actives that you are working with, just to get to know who they are and connect with them also.
Oh, most definitely. I will make sure they get your information.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate you both.
All right.
God
Thank
bless.
you. Be blessed.
God bless.
All right. So, Dr. Thompson, we spent a lot of time on this, but it was an important conversation, and I hope it'll help people start looking and paying attention to what they see taking place, because there's a lot going on. I hope also that we'll understand, right now we're in a recess lull. When the Labor Day comes, everything's going to take off, and people are going to be running in different directions. Candidates going to be coming at us right, left, and center. But you mentioned something earlier when you mentioned the propositions. That's one of the things that I'm doing, is spending a lot of time, and I will be spending time giving people the understanding of the difference between Prop 26 and 27, why one group of Indians supporting 27, they're opposing 26, and vice versa. And so we know that one of the strategies with propositions is that when people want to confuse the public, if there's a strong proposition that's coming out against the interests, like the developers that were up north, then they will come up and create a counterfeit citizens group with another proposition to dilute the possibility of the first one getting passed.
Yeah.
So we're gonna help our community understand what we're up against, and we just want people to know we're back and we're ready to go, and we're really gonna have things happening.
Yeah, and I think more than anything else is that we cannot get comfortable. No. And I think that's what's happening in our society, in our communities today. There are a lot of people that have gotten comfortable with, where they are financially or where they live or how things are going. And their energy is that I don't have time to deal with that anymore. But again, there is generations that are going to come after us. And if we're not careful, we will find ourselves back at ground zero because we basically didn't have time. So we have to make time.
History will repeat itself.
Yeah.
It will repeat itself. We want people to understand tonight, as we are preparing to go forward, we have some exciting meetings lined up, coming up for the future. I want to encourage you, if you haven't done so, to go to the Apple and Google store and download the Voice and Viewpoint app, so that you can be in touch with us on a daily basis. We're making plans to update 24 hours a day in real time news concerning people of color worldwide, and especially here in our state where we have so much work to do. And so we want to do that. We want to encourage more support for GOD Radio 1. We're the only two really media outlets in our community. And we don't want people to think that social media, as important as it is, has become a substitute for what we do in terms of being the trusted messengers for the community.
Yeah, and one of the things about it is that in the media outlet, we are definitely using all aspects. So we use the social media, we use our apps, we use the websites, we use all of that to get the news. But one of the key things about having a printed document called the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint, that printed document becomes a historical document as we move forward. It is when everything else, when the internet goes down, we still have the archives to be able to pull these things back together. And as we move forward, we don't want to lose the culture of reading and the culture of filling the actual pages. Honestly, Dr. Warren, I have a hard time actually reading online. I can't do the
I
Kindle
know.
books because
I
they
can't
literally
either.
disturb my eyes.
Yeah, I can't do it either. But at the same time, that we want people to understand that the companion piece is like what was just done here with the monkeypox webinar.
Yeah.
And was an outstanding job that you hosted and that Voice and Viewpoint, you did it, Mandate, GOD Radio 1, Black Men and Women United got involved with it, and we brought people together at a very critical time in terms of dealing with this pandemic issue. And so we need to just pay attention across the board because there's a lot going on, and we've got a lot of stuff that we're about to bring forward. And we want it to be synonymous. You know, we were just on the midway with the concert by the Bay. Now you have the event coming up for Labor Day.
Jazz at the Creek.
Jazz at the Creek. And we work as a unit, as a team. And so our community needs to come together and give that team support. I've been very pleased with what we've seen coming back out from the pandemic, that people are supportive.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things about it, and with the monkeypox town hall, you know, shout out to Dr. Robinson. He was tenacious to bring the organizations together, the Voice and Viewpoint, Black Men and Women United, the Urban League, the NAACP. There is what I call the town criers that are going to be those that will help us to understand the importance before it is too late, like COVID. We're like, oh, okay, COVID, but then it started mutating and mutating, and it was important for us to understand the mutations and how it might affect. And this because you had COVID and you survived COVID, there are some people that still are having long-term effects. Now we have the monkeypox, and we really, really don't know the real outcomes
We
of
have
that.
no idea. And so we're going to stay on it, though, and we're going to
Yeah.
pass the information on. And we want you to continue to tune in and let us hear from you, if you will. And we're going to make this thing go. The hour has gone fast, Dr. Thompson.
Yeah,
but
I
it
mean,
was well
first time
spent.
back. Yeah, I'm very, very excited, and you know, I want to encourage people to understand this is that we're going to have guests that will come on that we might agree with or disagree with, but we have them on to create the dialogue and to have the conversation. Sometimes you will tune in and you might not agree with everything that you hear, but it is an information piece. This is from the
Yes.
desk of the editor. Lots of things will be discussed, but hey, we have an open mic. And so that means that if you agree or disagree, you can always call in and ask questions or even be able to participate in it. The one thing that I encourage people to do is that we don't allow people to come on and just take over the show, nor do we allow people to be disrespectful.
Right.
We have the power of the mute and the cutoff. So we want to just encourage you at the end of the day, this is an open forum. We're going to continue to do it. This is from the desk of the editor with Dr. John Warren. Any final words before we sign off?
Just be blessed and stay alert.